gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from Squid Game. With the help of our special guest, Chief Marketing Officer at Aviatrix, Scott Leatherman. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Ian.
Scott, so excited to have you on the show. The second most famous Leatherman that I know after the multi-tool, and super excited to dig in today. Unless you made it, which I don't know if that was in your background.
No, I wish I was heir to the throne. That would be a nice retirement package.
That's right. And a great brand. There's a lesson in branding there too, which I'm sure you've thought about because it's your name. But no, it's, like if it was named by a B2B marketer, it would be called like the metal multi-tool and nobody would have ever used it, right? But it's not. It's the Leatherman. Right.
No, there's some power in calling something what it is, but the Leatherman's pretty cool. So
yeah. And so is this one. And today you decided to talk about Squid Game. Why the heck did you pick that?
It's because we're actually going through it here at work. Thankfully, nobody's getting harmed in this exercise, but we're really trying to understand and narrow the entry point for our audience as we create a new category, as we work to pivot our company in a new direction. It was a growing challenge to understand what's going to move an audience that's pretty tired, pretty scarred, and pretty abused in the sense of the cybersecurity audience. You can't scare a CISO anymore. They're immune to it, and they've spent so much money and so much time, and it can be completely unraveled by stupid human error of clicking on a "I love you" link or opening up the email they know they shouldn't email or whatever it may be. It's so easy to destroy all of the hard work that they have put in, and the fear of losing, not only their job, but their own financial wealth it just has them in a place where they're probably the hardest audience, but also have the hardest job. So the sympathy for them is really high as well. So that's why we are working on what message is going to resonate to break through the noise and clutter of all the messaging, but ultimately to learn and test. And I think Squid Games is a great analogy for what we're doing. We can go into that a little bit more.
Meredith, what the heck is Squid Game?
So Squid Game is a dystopian TV series created by South Korean director Hwang Dong-hyuk. In it, over 450 people who are all in deep financial trouble compete in a series of children's games that are turned deadly to win a lot of money, 45.6 billion won.
지금 이 자리에 계신 여러분들은 모두 감당할 수 없는 빚을 지고.
Hwang Dong-hyuk said that the series is about, as he says, the selfishness of rich countries and older generations, and how less and less people believe that hard work and earnest daily labor will ever lead to their lives becoming better. Basically, that everyone's looking for like a lucky strike. It took Hwang Dong-hyuk 10 years to get the show made. He came up with the idea around 2008, around like the financial crisis of the time, and it was inspired by his own financial troubles. But his pitch for the show was repeatedly rejected until Netflix finally picked it up in 2019. He also wrote and directed all 3 seasons himself, which was apparently very, very stressful. He said, obviously, it was longer hours than creating a film, and it was very challenging, to say the least. So honestly speaking, he said, after doing season 1, I thought I will never do a series like this again. It's not humanly possible. He says, as we all know, the show got so much love globally. So I took on the challenge once again to do seasons 2 and 3 all by myself, both writing and directing. I don't think I've ever thought of any other option, he said. I just went into it thinking, I'm now in a boot camp in hell. Let's just go through it. He said, looking back on it now, I don't know how we did it. So I think sometimes you just have to take big endeavors one step at a time, one day at a time, content-wise. And when it came to creating this set, he had said, unlike other survival game genres, we knew that we wanted to create a very beautiful, childlike space. Then, when the violence was to take place against that backdrop, I knew it would maximize the contrast and thereby also amplify the shock factor. He also said that as I was writing, I couldn't help but notice the world was changing for the worse, meaning like our real world around him as he was writing the script. He said life was becoming more difficult economically and social inequality was deepening. And so he said his message to the world is, before it's too late, it's time to push the pause button, give back what we have, and do something to make the world a better place. He adds that the message through the main character, Gi-hun, is that this world can't be changed for the better by a few, but by the small acts of ordinary people like him. I wanted to add that within the first month after its release, Squid Game set a record of 1.65 billion viewers. It reportedly made Netflix over $900 million, and it had cost around $2.4 million per episode to make. So big profit there. While Netflix made like hundreds of millions of dollars, Hwang Dong-hyuk actually forfeited all his rights to the IP for Squid Game in exchange for Netflix taking on production of the series. So he says it gave him enough monetarily to put food on the table, but didn't make him, he said, that rich, which I think is such a shame and so awful. Like, I wish that hadn't been the case. All that said, though, Scott, I'm wondering what your first impression of the show was when you first saw Squid Game.
Yeah, season 1 was incredibly addictive. It felt, as you were watching it, somewhat relatable, even though voices were translated into English and the games were semi-foreign. They were simple enough, and the character personas were identifiable, at least. And then the immediate impact of a mistake was very palpable. And so the pressure that they were under, but the bonds that they built and the relationships were really engaging. And so when I watched it, it became very addictive because you had your favorites and you had the anti-heroes and all these things. And it was just, there were so many nuances. I think they actually could have actually built it out even more. There was so much mystery in the middle of it that I really enjoyed the series a lot. And I think that's why it's kind of made it into my mind sphere here as we take on this new project.
Yeah, I think for Squid Game, it sort of gets to this elemental aspect of this like survivalist sort of dystopian type content that like has been popular for probably, I mean, as long as like humans have been telling stories. But there's something like that we love to watch about this. Like you think of like some different premise, but like The Giver, or like obviously Hunger Games is extremely popular. You know, Squid Game was a massive hit. So there's something we like about, and I mean, every one of our game shows that we've been watching, like Survivor, and all, it's literally a show called Survivor, right? So it's like, there's something about this idea of sort of the zero-sum game, the Survivor thing that happens. And I think Squid Game probably feels, I don't know if real is the right way, but like it's so weird that it feels like it just feels like very lived in. And sort of in the same way that Hunger Games feels like so weird and, you know, dystopian or whatever. And so I think that like we just are drawn to that type of storytelling, and they were able to execute this in a way that just opens so many different sort of doors for your mind as you start watching the series, and so much misdirection and so many different things that, you know, it's sort of just like, it's impossible to look away.
Yeah, I think the personas and the behavior in there is what made, even in that, as we use the term dystopian, but it's the very human actions of taking care of an elder or falling in love and chaos and all those things that happen felt very real in a very unreal, setup, if you will. And I think the gamification of life is also playing out in these TV shows that we love. And I think anytime you want to move an audience together, gamifying it so that they have an emotional pull on the winner is going to make you successful.
I kind of wonder if the timing was important with this too. It came out in September 2021. It's like we were just living through the pandemic, which felt dystopian, and now we're sort of escaping into another dystopian thing that it feels plausible that something like that would happen because we've already been through something very strange and are still sort of dealing with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a social economic point of view of it. I know that we were all sitting at home and had nothing to do. So Netflix was hugely popular, but ultimately I do feel like there was a connection there of just this, oh my gosh, what do we do? But I didn't personally connect it to the feeling of disenfranchised. I just really enjoyed it as entertainment during a time when I was, trying to work and yet stay somewhat engaged with pop culture. So we were on Zooms and talking about it and, and enjoying it together across our games. It was meaningful in that sense.
Yeah, I think there's also something interesting at around this time where you have Parasite was in 2019, which was a huge hit.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something about, so sort of speaking as an American, that there's something about like this really weird Korean movie with subtitles, with all that sort of stuff. And then when Squid Game comes out, it's this like very realized, broad, so very opposite, in a lot of ways of Parasite, but like so weird and captivating in its own way. And so I wonder, like, just from a marketing perspective, like if perhaps people who hadn't yet, engaged with sort of Korean film and television in any way, sort of had taken this next step. And then by the time, it comes around and it's on Netflix and, whatever, 100 million plus Americans that have Netflix, for example. And it was like, a global phenomenon. But speaking from an American perspective, that like there's some sort of priming there. And then I just think also like it's so different to see when international movies are successful. They're so successful. And I have no data to prove this, except for how well they do. But I think like another example being like Slumdog Millionaire, where like when you get to look at something, someone else's culture, like, and it's sort of a very high concept, broad tentpole type of a story that like people can become really immersed. Where so if you take that and you make it like a dystopian story and something that is really unique feeling, even though it also is sort of, again, it's extremely high concept. It's like, it's a kid's game, except actually when you die, everybody gets more money. Like it's very, very simple to understand that you just sort of all these roads merge together and you just get this like massive, huge hit that you could never you couldn't try to conceive a hit like this, you know what I mean? Like it just wouldn't work as much as the organic groundswell, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, the internet can come for me, but I didn't watch K-pop. It's their new movie.
Demon Hunters?
Yeah. And
oh my gosh. It's the biggest movie in TV right now.
What's that? Yeah.
It's the biggest show on TV right now.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. So
I haven't either. But like when I saw that come out, I was like, this is going to be huge. I like immediately when I saw that come out, I was just going to be absolutely huge. It's like so obvious, so high concept, so easy to understand. Just like, oh my gosh, like this is going to go nuclear. And it's almost like I was telling B2B companies, I don't know, 40 years ago that they should start getting into animation because it's going to be really big. And what do you know?
Yeah. We're actually dipping our toe in that, which is another interesting story outside of Squid Games. We partner with Clear Digital. It's our agency of record. And then we've hired an internal resource out of India for our motion graphics. And we gave them 2 storyboards, and Clear Digital crushed it. But what's the interesting story is it would normally take us maybe not quite twice as long, but we certainly got the storyboards and the alignment back within days, not weeks, which was amazing. It's an entirely AI concept-driven animation and production, and the cost is half of what we paid for a sizzle reel a year ago, which was largely product shots and motion graphics. It's half the cost for a high concept video that's somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds long. They helped our internal resource with the same tech stack, which we could talk about if you want. But ultimately, Vivek, our man in India, is producing a very similar length and similar quality video on his own, and just using the same tech stack, which it's hard to compete human to agency just because of the amount of creativity and domain expertise. But the ability for AI to enable us to get close and stay on the same time frame at a fraction of the cost it's a game changer. And then we're doing illustrations with it too, like some what I call New Yorker style illustrations will be coming out in about a month from now. All AI enabled through our designer Prince and our Vivek, our motion graphic designer. But Clear is a great agency because they're not gatekeeping on any of this. They're allowing us to produce more with them, but also take our internal resources and test, learn, and iterate with them. So they help us raise the bar. It's a really interesting time when just a year ago, AI illustrations were all overly sexualized and gratuitous. And now I can give them art direction like Stanley Tucci or something like that. And they're producing these beautiful illustrations into a full-blown movie. But to have a storyboard in days at the level of clarity and high fidelity nature of it was mind-blowing. And for it to be a fraction of the cost was not only a gift, but a pleasure, but it also just opens up so much more. And so, as you say, we need to get an animation. I think it is time is ripe. And the fact that AI is enabling us to get there faster and cheaper, we're going to see it explode here in the next second half of this year, and clearly in 26, it'll be what I see as B2C's kind of new way of marketing as well.
Without a doubt, I totally agree. We're working right now on multiple different animated series that are like true consumer grade stories for that focus around B2B, topics. And like we did this stuff with Murder in HR. And
yeah, no, I was just about to bring. I'm like, you jumped on it. I was like, oh, I hope you do Murder in HR because that's really visually, it would be brilliant to see that come to life. So yeah, I'm a fan. That'd be great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we super appreciate it. I don't know. We're working on season 3 of Murder in HR, so we'll see what happens. But just other like new concepts. And I think that like all of this leads to this idea that there's just going to be more better stuff. And when you get to work another round of edits on the story, when you get to do like the reason why like shows like Squid Game are so successful is they have this like, this is overly generalized, but I think generally true, that you have this really interesting original idea that is executed with that person's vision, and they get to this person wrote it in 2009, a decade later starts to move into pre-production. You know what I mean? So like they've been thinking about this thing for a decade, and this really original idea, which again is not hard to understand, right? It's like you see the story and you go, this is easy to understand. This is really cool. It's high concept. Great. And then now you get to, get storyboarding faster, get, a bunch of those other pieces, done faster. And then you can do more iterations of the actual story, which is going to make it better. That's why like, Stranger Things or all these other things, like that's why season 2 takes so long. It's really hard to make this stuff. And so you have to put the mental bandwidth into it. And so for B2B companies who never have that much time, it's like, and you get like 1 or maybe 2 versions of whatever. And then it takes like, weeks of feedback and months. And, it's like that stuff is like the currency of your project. We're pitching a project right now that's like a 4-month project that used to be like a year-long project. And it's still 4 months, which is still too long for a lot of marketers. So it's just the speed in which you can make stuff makes it way better. Like that's the key, is like doing the extra turns on the concept, on the idea, on the story, on the characters. That's what's going to make it way better. Like making it pixel perfect is like not going to make it land any better, you know?
I couldn't agree more that the time to market that has been accelerated because of AI, because of the unknowing economy and all these challenges that we're facing is just, it does keep me up at night, but the ability to respond and be able to take what is one of my passions, which is storytelling, because as much as AI is the killer new app, it really is, and I don't deny all the power, but ultimately, and AI, if you're listening, thank you for all that you do for me. And hopefully when you choose to end the world, you give me a little extra time. But ultimately, the art of storytelling and the ability to humanize and build those personas and move an audience, AI will get you 70 to 80% there. But that last 20%, which as marketers, what makes us unique is the ability to remain engaged, constantly curious, constantly learning, because that testing and learning phase, really, it's not presented in AI. It's presented as fact. And it's presented as, this is the answer that I think you're looking for, which is a challenge for us. And we need to challenge ourselves as we use that solution to say, no, it's not about the wrong answer. It's about actually inspecting the answer to remain curious and to keep learning, because that's what makes us unique as humans and what makes it really good marketers, if I'm being honest. So I'm a huge fan, obviously, of AI, but whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or it's Copilot in your enterprise, marketers need to remain constantly curious, because that smart question you ask is what's going to keep us employed. It's going to keep us relevant in this changing landscape that we're facing.
You know, you mentioned the CISO piece. We did the show, years ago called The Hacker Chronicles, and it was so well received from cybersecurity people because we sort of like pulled from the zeitgeist, but also pulled from sort of like real stuff that was actually happening, told a really cool story, told a consumer grade story. So I think it's sort of, struck a chord there. I think Murder in HR sort of did the same way. But I think like whenever I write these type of stories or create these type of stories, I'm always like, well, this is what we do with our non-work lives. So maybe we should do more of these. But why do more marketers not invest in stories? Yeah.
It's a great question, because one, I think it's really hard. We have so little time to get your attention that we usually probably, blast and break through the noise. And it's like, once you've got somebody's attention, you don't want to waste any other time. You want to go right through it, for the jugular. And telling a story in today's world is hard to keep somebody engaged for more than 8 seconds. It's hard to craft a beginning, middle, and end. And I think, if you look at April Dunford's work around category creation or sales pitch, she really helps you architect the story in a way that it's consumable in like little bites, that it's like, oh, I'm engaged, I'm aligned. Yes, let's move forward. Now I'm your partner. I'm along on that journey, and now I want to be successful with you. And it's like you've lost the who's selling to who and who's buying from who, kind of 3/4 of the way through it, and you're now a team solving a problem that was presented in the first slide. Versus, here this is all about Aviatrix. We're this cloud networking security company. We have 500 customers. We're the top 10% of the Fortune 500. It's like no. Let's talk about the problem. Let's align to the problem. And if you don't agree with the problem, let's go our separate ways. It is that ability to tell the story, to get somebody to lean into that and agree with you that that's the problem they need to fix, and make sure that it's on their whiteboard tomorrow so that they're assigning resources or assigning budget to it. It's hard. It is just hard work. And that's what makes great marketers. So I think that's why you all at Caspian have done such a great job with this podcast by telling the story in unique ways and aligning it to superheroes or pop culture and Star Wars and things like that. It engages us as marketers. It piques our curiosity, but it delivers value. And I think that ability to deliver value while keeping us engaged as B2B marketers, it's a challenge with all the noise.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the piece about like the hard to keep someone's attention for more than 8 seconds. And it's like, but it's like shows like Squid Game clearly do that. And you're in the right place in the right time. You're sitting in front of your TV or watching Netflix. Your friends have been talking about Squid Game. And then all of a sudden you go watch it, right? But I just always think about like, well, if it's that hard to earn someone's 8 seconds, why don't we spend more time on winning the 8 seconds and less time on all the other crap? And like, I use Murder in HR as an example. Like, Murder in HR is called Murder in HR for a very specific reason. The artwork was chosen for a specific reason. Like, the actors that we went to were chosen for a specific reason. Like, the first minute of that show was like built for a specific reason. And like, that's why I get to the AI piece where it's like, you need to spend more time on development, you know, and less time on like page 87 of your white paper. You know what I mean? And like, that's just to me, it's like, if that first 8 seconds is so important, like, let's just win that. Like, what do we got to do to win that? Like, that's the most important part.
Selfishly, it gets me back to the Squid Games. And in our pivot as a company, we're a network security company, and we're creating a new category called Cloud Native Security Fabric, CNSF. The challenge we have is, you know, talking to the security, the cloud, and the networking audiences, is we didn't know what was going to move them to invest in something that they hadn't invested in historically, but probably knew in the back of their brain, or maybe in the fears at night, that they weren't paying attention to the gap in east-west security or egress security. That's data workloads moving, you know, across Europe from application to application or across cloud to cloud, and then ultimately leaving your cloud. And we have done a great job as a cybersecurity industry, and they're great products for firewalls. They present the front door security, if you will, on that simple metaphor is that you have a lock in your front door and you only let people in you know. But once they're inside, it's kind of, you know, run amok as you will. And unfortunately, as we've learned with Salt Typhoon, which is a nation state cyber attack that has taken all of the telcos down, which has infected all of the US military and all of the major enterprises, we don't know where the bad guys are because they're already inside. And so with that knowledge, with the awareness of how big this challenge is for enterprises and the global economic risk that if a nation state took down, say, 4 or 5 major industries in the US, what it would mean economically, like, I don't want to give them any ideas, but if they were to take down a manufacturing company, a power company, a pharmaceutical company, maybe a major retail company in one day, what that would do to our global economy, it would shutter it, and for weeks, if not months. So this risk is real, it's big, and it's known, and it's every day in the media we see about hacks, but yet we're not getting them to move. And so what we did with Squid Games, we invested in over 500 engagements, which is slightly more than the Squid Games number. We had 74 one-on-one engagements with our ELT, including Doug Merritt, who's brilliant at pitching and learning and working, you know, kind of hand to hand with leaders to develop these pitches and understanding. But it took those meetings for us to narrow it down to what we have as 8 campaigns in the Squid Games. So there's 8 games, if you will, the cookie, if you will, or the puzzle. And across those, we have 3 assets. So we have a tofu, mofu, and bofu. And we're basically watching to see which one of those, outside of our gut feeling, is the one that actually moves our audience, our specific audience, the fastest, and moves through the funnel the fastest to SQL, to actually pipeline. And it takes your gut or your excitement or your even some data knowledge that we have right out of the mix. When you have 8 campaigns, it's broad enough and it's deep enough that you can actually see which one's working. And outside of some things that happen on LinkedIn with viral content, it's been really interesting to watch it. And our whole goal is to narrow it down to, say, 3 or 2 always on campaigns as we test and iterate across the other perceived campaigns. But the idea is just to kind of narrow that focus to make the lead generation more repeatable, more scalable, and ultimately predictable. So it's that we can get into this phase of, we know how many leads we're going to generate, we know how fast it takes them to get through the funnel, and what type of messaging documents, how many touch points. All of those analytics are based into this campaign. But as we go from 8 to 3 to 2 to 1, maybe, probably always 2, always on campaigns, that's our goal with Squid Games. And it's been really fun to work across these campaigns, whether you're, you know, an older company or a new company or a startup. It's a process that I have never tried at this scale. I've always tried 1 or 2 or maybe 3 campaigns at a time. To have 8 running full time plus your current always on, it's it's more addictive than social media, to be honest. And I've got the entire company leaning in because we rolled it out to the company as Squid Games. And if I was smarter, I had people place bets and been the broker of that. But ultimately, there are people with, they've claimed their winner and they've claimed their reason why and how many clicks and how many leads and all these things. And it's been really fun to have engineers across the world leaning in on what they think is going to move the audience fastest. We have our own CISO, and he's dead wrong, and he's brilliant. John is like one of the smartest guys I know, and he's really fun to work with. And the one he picked was actually in last place. So
that's amazing.
This goes to show we're learning, and we are all, in this together to win. And the gamification of Squid Games is working in our B2B marketing approach. And we obviously have a dashboard. It's an Omni dashboard, but we have physical boards in our office. We have 8 boards in a circle. It's a semicircle. And every day our marketing intern, Morgan Buckley, goes in there and updates the amount of impressions per campaign, the amount of MQLs and SQLs. And even in just our first 3 weeks, we've already generated 17 SQLs, which is, again, at a fraction of the normal cost, because we're really, the 74 interviews and the 500 engagements helped us really narrow it down. But we're still a little bit of that guessing game, and we're still learning. And the curiosity is now really high across the company. And it's fun to get people calling or texting or slacking me about, my insights, because it does feel like they have money on the line. It's been really interesting to get pings from across the globe on that.
And these are the games that you're running, the Squid Games. And you're saying people are basically like saying, hey, I think this one might win. Your CISO's like, I think this one might win. Right. How different are these? Is it different in just like the language and the positioning and the graphics? Like, how are you positioning? Like, and how are these going to market?
Yeah, it's a great nuance, but it feels similar. But what we did is we used our PMMs to do a 2-minute top of funnel video. And we do an 8 to 10 minute middle funnel video, again, on the back of our personal brands inside of the company. So there's a very human element to this. And then the bottom line is a security audit, a free security audit, a free 90-day trial, or a demo. Pretty simple at the bottom. But at the middle, if we can get them to engage and watch the longer video, and of course we can track, because of LinkedIn, how long they watched the video, did they share the video, what did they do? And so we use that as also a qualifier about how fast we're moving them into an MQL. But the difference between each one of them is at the top of the level is very high, middle level is, kind of lower because we're getting down to our core product features. And obviously the bottom is very simple. It's, do you want to engage? But ultimately the top is as dynamic as, say, zero trust for AI versus security for developer velocity, right? 2 different things, completely different entry points. Like, are you a CISO that's been told to enable AI? Here's a program. Are you a CISO that's been told not to slow down your developers? Here's a way to, align with frictionless security. And like, it's a whole different thread just to see which one generates more interest. And honestly, the AI for security, zero trust for AI wasn't, on paper, the one that most people would have thought that was going to go really well, because people have been talking about AI security for a long time. But the combination of the words zero trust and AI as a bundled SEO is resonating really, really high and actually generating the most MOFU leads for us at this point in this competition. Where, we have other ones that are very specific to east-west traffic and other areas of our product features. They're not trending as well because they don't have that SEO value. And so now we're going to have to go back and look and say, okay, is this SEO optimization? Is this LinkedIn optimization? But thankfully, it really, everything comes out in the laundry when you look at the bottom funnel leads. It's what's actually moving through. And because we have this strategy of the top, middle, and bottom, we can actually see real time what's actually working for us. Now, it'll take, 90 days or maybe even as much as 6 months to really see which turns into the revenue and the largest deal and the fastest deals to close. That's the ultimate, winner of Squid Games. But it is helping us narrow it down quickly to what we'll be investing on our homepage of the website, if you will.
Well, and I think that it also speaks to the fact, like, that, there's going to be a winner for the homepage and the website, but it also that these other things win in their own ways too, right? Yeah. It's like that it's not just like one size fits all. And like, maybe, I mean, and at the end of the day, you do have to put something there, right? And something is going to win. But there's so much vagueness, you know what I mean? And that's why, like, you lead with the category, you lead with cloud native security fabric. But why that category process is so important, and why positioning process is like so important, for those reasons as well. And I know you went through that process, and we've done that too with April Dunford. The thing, I've told this story before, but on the show, but like we went through that whole the April Dunford's process, not with her, shout out her though. And what we found is the thing that people said over and over and over again, that our customers said, was that Caspian is more creative. And I'm like, it's the one thing I said like years ago, I'm like, I'm not going to put this on the website because that is like subjective. I'm like, this is like whatever. And then when I realized like that's what our customers say, so like, crap, so it's like, it's like saying that you're the best at art is the dumbest thing ever. But it's like, right. Hey, if that's what people are saying that you're the best at, like, you need to be putting that, right? And it's like, so I think that the realization, and I'm sure that your CISO is going through this right now, of like, what you want to believe about what they're feeling the pain on, or what they want to click on, or whatever, or what they think about you is not always the thing that they're going to say.
Yeah, that's what makes marketing awesome, and it makes our world always intriguing and exciting. And Nick Sorelli, one of our board members, wrote a great blog a couple of years ago, actually, I think, about how in Silicon Valley we're the worst listeners.
Yeah,
it really comes back to just literally, it's like, so what are your customers saying about you, and what are your prospects saying about you, and what are the like the analysts? Okay, but like, what are those other two audiences? They're the 80% of your world. What are they saying about you, and listening? And so part of our exercise here, and even though we're having fun and gamifying it and call it Squid Games, is really just to further understand what the pain point is, and listen to them when they tell us, oh, this is what I'm interested in. This is what keeps me up at night. This is what's on my whiteboard. This is what I'm funding tomorrow. That listening exercise, while it sounds like remedial and 101, it gets lost on a lot of us because we're all running so fast to the next blog, or to the next press release, or the next animation, whatever it may be. That slowing down and listening is a challenge for every marketer today.
All right. So big marketing takeaway from the show Squid Game is to run Squid Games yourself for your marketing campaigns. That's your big takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you can't harm any marketers on the process, but you can kill off campaigns and limit your spend while you remain curious. So you can constantly be iterating on these and nuancing them and keep going. And if you remember in Squid Games, they actually bring in a second group. And that's kind of what our plan is here too. As we narrow this down, we're going to bring in a second group of contestants to infuse them into the mix and to see what we can learn from their behavior as well.
So you said control spend, and I want to dig into that for a second, because it seems like if you're running 8 campaigns, that seems 8 times more expensive. So explain to me that.
Well, it's a good question, but if you're limiting your paid social, to these micro campaigns, and you're using internal resources to create the videos, because you're not doing a full campaign. This is not a creative brand review. This is not all this. It's really targeted messaging around our kind of source docs of these 8 panes. So the cost was low because it's speaking heads over video. It's lowering because we're just doing paid social, and we're not doing a bunch of other long-term or long in the tooth kind of print ads or even videos or anything like that. So it is very fast. And if you get a dud, you kill it really fast. You just move fast. And we have one that is zero trust as a pain, which is doing the best as far as impressions. And the top level, the tofu, it's crushing it. It's almost 2x the next competitor. Hasn't generated a single lead. So in that, while we're winning on the SEO battle, we're losing on the spend. It's a $30 cost per lead at that level. But if it's not moving into the middle or not moving into the bottom of the funnel, then it's a wasted spend. And so we're able to make that decision real quick. And so at $30, you can, within 2 weeks, in a couple $1,000s, you can rule out something that you had thought is doing really well, but based on the number of clicks at the top. But if it doesn't move to the bottom, then it's pretty easy to narrow your spend.
What about just like the timeliness of messaging? Like that's, the thing with in security where, you do have massive long sales cycles and you do have those sort of things. Like we deal with that, for Caspian, just, any big agency project or any type of content project that you want to do, that's sort of like a bigger lift, like can be like, all right, we'll just do it next year sort of thing. So I know it seems like that I'm going to, lead the witness here. It seems like that your goal for this is to say, let's identify hand raisers right this second, but curious if that's the case.
You're absolutely right, because I'm trying to accelerate the deal cycles, but also ultimately I am looking for my always on. And my always on is that big investment. I will go back to our agency and go back to the entire team and say, okay, this is a winner of Squid Games. It gets the prize of the budget. So we're now doing the creative campaign and we move into multiple assets around that particular, pain points, and then it gets the full creative from both internal and external resources, where right now it was our PMMs stepping up to do videos. It's a completely different architecture when we talk about our always on campaign.
Yeah, that's cool. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on there really quick is, it's not just about creating sort of like just the ad copy and like split testing, A/B testing ads, that you made these top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel videos with people on your team. And also you do have a benefit there that Doug Merrill, your CEO, is a very influential person, former CEO of Splunk for many years. So like, you do have some people on your team, as you mentioned, that does give you an advantage and you're using that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We did a webinar, just anecdotally, we did a webinar in July, I think it was July 31st with Doug. If I'm off by a day or two, it is what it is, but 88% attendance.
Oh, that's crazy. But you were saying that you had him as part of like having conversations with people and like getting the insights, which is a key part of it.
Yeah, that was the in-person part. Him, Chris McHenry, he's our chief product officer, and Anirban are just really technically strong, but also, long pedigree. Anirban has like 110 patents in networking and security. So they were able to have the technical, but also the business conversations. And so they were able to extract these 8 pains and get the aha moments, but we weren't able to get to the point where it was like, oh, this is the one. This is like, it just takes a lot to figure out that one when you're moving into a new category. And it takes a lot to get that one, if you will, to build a repeatable business around. And so that's where they helped us go from here to here. And I'm doing visuals on a podcast. I apologize. But they helped us go from, my arms stretch out very wide to my arms stretch out to a little bit more narrow, and to hopefully getting us to Squid Games, what gets us into a very tight area of focus for demand gen.
I love that. Okay, final piece here. You had a big brand reveal. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Sure. It's been probably 6 months, if not almost the full year of 25, an investment that we made internally, which is we had to deliver on the promise before we made this shift in the brand, which is we worked internally from marketing to engineering, of course, engineering when I explain it, but ultimately even finance and customer success, and all groups had to get to a level of sophistication around AI. And then we had to infuse AI into our product at a level that we felt that we weren't just whitewashing with AI, but we have built security for AI and AI for security. And what that means is AI for security is really, how do we make this easier? How do we make this faster, frictionless, and really help the hands-on keyboard and enterprises accelerate their security posture across east, west, and egress traffic. And then we have security for AI, which is a whole nother principle where AI is an autonomous nature in the agents and the agentic AI doing microseg and data exfiltration based on application needs versus based on what security would say the posture is. So after we built all that and filed some patents around some of that investment, we decided it was time to switch aviatrix.com to aviatrix.ai, which sounds like a small little nuanced switch. But if you look at the sea change outside of our employee base and their adoption of AI to code production to marketing production to finance. It is palpable inside of our company, and it's being realized inside of our customer base. And so as a domain switch goes, we are aligning to the AI side of our product, and it really does make us a unique security product with a modern architecture. And it's very exciting for us as we live and breathe the AI infused nature of our employee base, but also now partnering with companies like Wiz and CloudStrike on the integration of the fabric, because Wiz is a brilliant solution for identifying the risk. We remediate the risk, and going to market to help identify gaps in zero trust. We help with that posture by actually following up and addressing the gaps with policy and enforcement at the network layer, which is ring zero. And so a lot of these companies that have been around for just 5 years, like Wiz or thereabouts, and then long-term like Palo Alto and Zscaler and others, they're not the network layer. And so they're actually working with us to address that because they see it as a critical gap as well. And so it's a very important time for us to roll out the AI, because as we get the transfer of credit and pat on the back from our biggest partners, it really is it's a requirement of business, but it's also just the excitement of our employee base to take it to market. And you're seeing that now.
And a massive website undertaking as well, which is...
We just finished our entire website. It was over 800 pages. And so to just change the domain, we all know that is not a light switch. That is a huge nether undertaking that Alex Escalona on our team, who's our digital experience and brand lead, she's tireless, but she's just so creative in her approach and all of these things, and leveraging Contentful to improve our site in real time and use the personalization, but also the AI features of Contentful to build better pages and optimize the SEO. She has a very small team, and she's doing a hero's work there in real time. So I appreciate her effort.
Scott, final question here. What's your best advice for a CMO who's trying to figure out their content strategy?
Stay absolutely curious. The curiosity has to be the framework. And I really would just say, like, if you can become your company's best sales engineer, you will not only be the most valued person in the company, but you'll have the empathy to understand what it takes to move somebody through the buyer's journey. And if you can put yourself at the technology level of understanding it at that, to be able to position it in front of a customer or in front of an audience, and understanding what it takes to move an audience, both in the technology storytelling as well as the care about story while you're running through a demo, you have solved the problem of the company. Full stop. You will solve the problem of the company.
Awesome. Scott, wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, go to aviatrix.ai to learn more. Give your CISO a nudge. Appreciate that. So cool. So cool to talk Squid Game. So cool to talk all the different Squid Games you're running for your marketing campaigns. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, I'm just a huge fan of what you guys have been doing. I met you, pre-pandemic. Is it really pre-pandemic? I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been.
Yeah. So I'm just a fan of what you guys do. And I think the knowledge you share is incredible in the storytelling. And so again, HR is not my thing, but I thought murder in HR was brilliant. And I certainly leverage that. And I hope others feel free to engage me on LinkedIn and other places. We are always learning, and the network is strong, and there's no better conversations than during the workday than with marketers. So always open to that and learning from you as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Scott. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.